Hello, and welcome to another episode of Face to Face with Doug Schoon. I'm your host, Doug Schoon. Thank you very much for joining me today. Well, this week I want to talk about questions I've received from people, viewers like you. There have actually been a lot of questions, so I'm going to divide them into two parts. I'll answer 5 questions this week, and the next week I'll answer 5 more. But that doesn't mean I still don't want questions. I love your questions, and I'd rather answer your questions than pick topics myself. So please submit them to DougSchoonsBrain@gmail.com. You'll see that address at the end of this episode again. I'd like to get your myths, suggestions, questions, topics for discussion, anything you'd like to tell me, I'd love to hear. Well, let's get started. Question 1. Doug, you said in an earlier episode that autoclaves need maintenance and testing to verify they're working properly. Can you give us some more information about how this is best done? Certainly. Here are some things you need to know. In the United States, the Center for Disease Control recommends weekly testing of autoclaves. This is to ensure that they're properly sterilizing implements. Other countries have similar rules or recommendations. Fortunately, maintenance is relatively easy. The autoclave's owner manual will provide you information about regular maintenance requirements such as cleaning, replacing seals, etc. So contact the manufacturer for more information about repairs and maintenance. Don't be misled by the color-changing indicator strips on an autoclave bag. These are only an indicator, and they don't assure you that the autoclave is working properly. Of course, if they fail to properly change colors, this will tell you the autoclave is not working properly. But these strips can change color even if the proper pressure were not reached. Achieving the correct pressure is just as important as the temperature. Again, indicator strips only detect temperature, not pressure. So regular maintenance is required to ensure that autoclaves get to the proper temperature and pressure. Just like your car needs a regular tune-up, so do autoclaves. Follow the manufacturer's instructions for cleaning, changing water, service visits, replacement parts, etc. Now, actually, the only way to really ensure that autoclaves are working properly is to regularly do something called a spore test. What's a spore? Well, a spore is like a seed for a fungal or bacterial organism. Normally, spores do not cause infections in hospitals, in salons. They're more of a concern in hospital surgical wards, where they cause many times more infections than they would ever in a salon. So salons aren't so worried about spores. Even so, spore testing is very useful for determining if the autoclave is working properly. This is why. You can purchase a sealed packet of specially prepared spores designed to be run through a complete autoclave cycle. This packet is then sent to a laboratory for testing. If the autoclave is functioning properly, these spores will be killed 100%. If any survive, the autoclave is malfunctioning. You can search the internet for a source to purchase these spore kits and a laboratory to have them tested. Or you can ask the manufacturer of autoclave. They should be able to provide this information as well. I'd start with a search of the internet, looking up autoclave spore testing. I recommend doing a spore test at least once per month. Hospitals will perform them weekly, but salons are not at all like hospitals, and the risk of infections are thousands of times greater for hospitals. So monthly, or more often if you choose, in the salon setting, I think is appropriate. I wouldn't go longer than a month. Many companies offer very low-cost plans that really are surprisingly low. So if you have an autoclave, I recommend you sign up for at least a monthly plan. If you're using the autoclave constantly, you may want to sign up for weekly testing. You don't want your autoclave malfunctioning for weeks without your knowledge. And this is the only way to ensure your autoclave is working properly. Finally, each time you perform a spore test, my recommendation is to record this in a logbook, along with the other records you keep related to cleaning, disinfection, and maintenance of your autoclave and other equipment such as pedicure chairs. Now, question 2. Does the nail plate absorb any chemicals in any of the products we use? I want to be able to provide my clients with the most accurate information possible. I know, Doug, that our nail plates absorb moisture via water, but do they also absorb acetone and other chemicals from gel polish, acrylics, and nail polish, etc.? Excuse me. The nail plate is very difficult to penetrate, which is what I believe you're asking. Skin is a barrier between us and the outside world. Our nail beds are skin, but they're covered with a tough, highly impenetrable barrier that prevents any sort of penetration. Other than nail oils and water, not much will penetrate very far past the upper layers of the nail plate. A good example of this would be a smoker stain on a nail plate. As the tars and nicotines absorb into the nail plate, these can't absorb very deeply, so instead they pool just underneath the upper surface of the nail plate to form a stain that becomes increasingly darker. The reason the stain becomes darker is because the nicotine and tars can't penetrate any deeper. Acetone is a good example, and something you asked about. Acetone is very volatile, which means it evaporates quickly. In fact, it evaporates so quickly it can't penetrate very far. It's going to evaporate before it really can penetrate any distance into the nail plate. And other ingredients don't penetrate either. Other than water and nail oils, if any ingredient in the nail product does penetrate the nail surface, it will be restricted to the upper layers of the nail plate. So in short, it's unlikely that any significant amounts of nail products that you mentioned can absorb beyond the upper surfaces of the upper surface or the upper layer of the nail plate. Question 3. If I polish the nails of a child, should I use a water-based nail polish instead? What are your thoughts on those types of products? Well, I'm happy to share that. First, nail polish does not absorb through the nail plate, and it won't get into the bloodstream. This is a myth turned into a trick, as I'll explain below. Secondly, nail polishes, they're not safer than any other types of nail polish. All nail polishes can be used safely. The solvent water, for instance, replaces other solvents in the nail polish. That's what makes them water-based formulas. They take those other solvents out and puts water in them. Also, there's some changes in thickeners and other ingredients that have to be water soluble. They change those out. But essentially, a water-based nail polish main claim to fame is that they can claim that they're water-based, as long as they're at least 51% or more of the formula is water. Well, there's nothing wrong with this, unless for some marketing reasons they suggested that replacing the solvents with water is necessary because these solvents are harmful. That's not true. There's little reason to believe that any solvent used in nail polish is harmful, especially since nail polish has been used for about 80 years using these same kind of solvents. If you look at the records, nail polish has a very long history of safe use. Of course, anything can be made to sound scary if that's your goal, and any trickster can come up with clever ways to manipulate the truth. A famous American named Will Rogers, he was a humorist, he once said, "Figures can lie, and any liar can figure. Isn't that the truth?" I'll give you some examples. If I wanted to scare you away from water-based nail polishes, I could have answered by stating emphatically, "What? Don't you know that water has killed millions of times more people than all other solvents in nail polish combined?" Or better, "Are you crazy? Didn't you know that water is a powerful chemical solvent that's been linked to many deaths and unimaginable levels of human suffering?" Or, "Don't you know that water-based nail polishes must contain preservatives or they become contaminated with bacteria?" Each of these statements are true. But so what? This doesn't mean that water isn't safe when used in nail polish. Of course water is a powerful solvent. It's not called the universal solvent for nothing. It dissolves more things than any other solvent. So what? Unless specifically packaged in sealed and airtight containers, any water-based cosmetic needs some sort of preservative to prevent the growth of bacteria and fungi. Preservatives help ensure that such products are safe for use. So it's not at all a negative that water-based polishes must contain a preservative. In fact, it's actually a positive. But it's also a positive that non-water-based nail polishes are self-disinfecting. In other words, traditional nail polishes do not need a preservative as they kill bacteria that's introduced into them, or fungi. But I could say this, yuck, do you want a nail polish that can grow bacteria? Or do you want one that doesn't contain that potentially deadly chemical water and doesn't contain any preservatives, unlike those water-based nail polishes? But I'll let you decide that for yourself and your family's safety. If you love them, that is. Did I really let you decide? Or is that just another trick? See how easily the truth can be manipulated by tricksters. So watch for these clever marketing tricks from the dark side, and don't be fooled. All nail polish is safe if used properly and according to manufacturers and directions, and all warnings are heeded. Remember that. All nail polishes can be used safely. I hope you have many days of happy polishing. Well, the next question, question 4, is, well, what about applying nail enhancements to children under 16? I get this question a lot. People think it's unsafe, and they don't really know why, but they ask me that. I usually say the same thing. Wearing any type of nail coating is much like owning a dog. Mom and dad should be the ones to decide when their child or their young adult is old enough to have either. Since I'm unaware of any scientific or medical information that suggests there is some minimum age, I think this is the best way to determine the right age for these types of services, or any other type of salon service. Different people reach the required maturity at different ages. Now, I know puppies are a lot of fun to own, and in a young person's mind, so are artificial nail coatings. But just like puppies, they require responsible care, maintenance, and upkeep expense. This requires a certain level of maturity and commitment. Of course, I know 40-year-olds that don't fit this requirement, but that should not be wearing enhancements. So who's to say that a responsible teenager shouldn't wear them? Of course, as a nail professional, your professional opinion should come into play as well. If you're ever uncomfortable with applying any artificial nail coating to anyone for any reason, then don't. Final question for this episode. Question 5. Doug, aren't vegan claims for food and not for cosmetics? What about vegan nail polish? Is that real? Well, many people agree with you, but there are several sides to this issue to consider. I've talked to several vegans about this, and they make a good point. They feel that if a product contains any animal byproducts, even though it's not a food, they don't want to use them, and they want to know. So some dietary vegans also look for so-called vegan cosmetics of all types. To my way of thinking, that makes this a valid claim. Even so, very few nail polishes use animal byproducts. Many nail polishes that could claim to be vegan don't, because they consider this to be not a meaningful claim. Now, by the way, I'm using the term nail polish properly to mean varnish, lacquer, or enamel. These are just different products, different names for the same product, I should say. So nail polish will be the generic term that I use throughout these episodes. Now, many years ago, some nail polishes used to contain fish scales, which create a sparkling effect, but that's not been done in years. Superior synthetic sparkle effects are now used instead. So there are really only two possibilities of animal